I'm not really sure how to start this. What I want to talk about is narratives in video games. You know, the big picture story, and not just the one told in the dialogue, but a sum of all of a game's parts. But games are huge. Really very huge, impossible, unscalable mountains of work, art, and time, and I could make an entire series on just one of those things, but I want to talk about all of it. And I don't want this video to be 14 hours long, so I'm not really sure how to start. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was released in November 1998 for the Nintendo 64 home console on a 256 megabit cartridge. Executive producer Shigeru Miyamoto, it sold 2.6 million copies in the first 2 months. 10 out of 10 review scores across the board from major publications such as IGN, GameSpot, and including the elusive 40 out of 40 from Famitsu magazine. It's not a stretch to say that the general consensus among people who played it as it launched is that this is the best game ever made. Today it's placed on best of all time lists and lauded by many as their favorite game. Why do people like this game so much? It's now more than 20 years old, but its essence is now etched into the DNA of gaming itself, and despite its age, the core pillars of this game's design are so solid. Some of the things that developers invented from thin air are better here than anywhere else. We start the game in a dream, or rather, a nightmare. Thunder, the castle bridge lowers. A chase. A rider and passenger escape the castle. The nightmare reveals itself and the dream fades to white. This game wastes no time in setting the tone for the experience, introducing us to characters through a cinemascape of shifting moods and themes. A dark and stormy nightmare, or the steady focus of a tall wise tree, or the whimsical flight of a forest fairy through a small village. I want to shout out the camera team and the director of cinematography, Tagumi Kawagoe. The camera technology was brought over from Super Mario 64, and space limitations and processing power of the N64 played a huge part in forming iconic shots and areas, but they go for it. First-person shots, enemy perspective, tracking shots, depth, field of view, are used unlike any game before. Just one scene in Zelda's courtyard is an all-you-can-eat buffet of cinematography, and if that wasn't enough, all of these scenes work in tandem with the diabolical earworms that Koji Kondo has composed for the game's musical score, and art designed by Yoshiaki Koizumi. Every scene has a laser-focused tone based largely around the characters in order to prime the player when these fairly brief scenes switch over to gameplay. In Ocarina of Time, you play as Link. Link is a member of the Kokiri tribe and the only forest child without a fairy. Navi is a fairy tasked by the Great Dooku Tree to aid Link in his destiny. You leave your house and talk to your friend Saria, and on your way to the Great Deku Tree, a girl sitting on an awning says, "Hey, look over here with Z." If I have to give a single reason as to why I like this game better, it's character-focused game design. For instance, Z-targeting, possibly the first thing this game teaches you how to do before you even learn how to swing a sword, is designed entirely around Navi. By pressing a button, it lets you focus on a target and better navigate the 3D space by locking the camera in place. It's an ingenious way to give camera control to the player, but it's so much more than that. This is how the player interacts with Navi, focusing on her as she flies over to interesting targets and asking for advice. This is intuitive game design and baked-in character development, and it's what I love about video games. Z-targeting not only lets Navi help Link navigate Hyrule, It merges gameplay and storytelling into a button. Getting used to a mechanic makes you better at playing the game, but learning Z-targeting makes Link and Navi a stronger team, better companions, friends. It's so well implemented in this game that you may not ever think about it, but you feel it. People who've played this game have a relationship with Navi, good or bad, because that relationship is woven into the very fabric of the game. When you enter a cutscene, the aspect ratio changes, same as when you press the Z button or talk to another character. It adds importance to your encounters because it implies focus both on part of the player and the characters. Miyamoto has said, "It is our intention to create something that is movie-like but not a movie, game-like but not a game, an arena that no one has yet experienced." And I think they succeeded, not just because this game lets players tell interesting stories the way they want with the camera, but they also built the freaking camera, not just as a way to render assets in 3 dimensions, but as a tool to tell richer stories. They got it so right in what was essentially their first try, and it laid the groundwork for the experience they're trying to show. Exploration has always been essential to Zelda gameplay, and adding a 3rd dimension gives the player so much more space to do that in. Where you could once only move in 4 directions, now you have nigh infinite ways to look. That meant a shift in gameplay priorities. Exploration of the 3D world is the focus of this game, and the developers had to change the pace of the game drastically. Link and Navi act like a mouse cursor, telling you who or what you can interact with. If there's something you didn't know yet about how the game operates, there's a good chance one of the characters you meet has that information. Information like how to move, or use your sword and shield, but later on, hints to key quests and extra lore. Sword fighting in Ocarina is visceral, but it's over in an instant and you're back to the main part of the game. The action in Ocarina, and even the time that you'd choose to use your sword, is more sparse than you'd expect. This lines up perfectly with the tone of the game. It's an adventure and a mystery, not so much an action game. You are meant to study and observe and explore. Now, being deliberate is better than being fast, and action exists as the culmination of your adventure, not as the adventure itself. Because Ocarina is not an action game. It's more than that. Okay, hear me out. Here's what you do in the game before you ever use your sword on a monster. You watch a few cutscenes, talk to Navi, leave your house, talk to Saria, run to the Deku tree, learn Z-targeting, talk to Mido, look for a shield, get 40 rupees, buy a shield, look for a sword, crawl through a log, dodge some rocks, open a chest, get a sword, equip the shield, talk to Mido, run down a path, then a scary plant jumps out and you can just run by it. This is what I mean by a different tone and pace. The combat is dynamic, and it's also a part of the game's atmosphere. When combined with Z-targeting, the camera shifts to the side so you always see both Link and your target at the same time. You can observe the obstacle and decipher a way to overcome it, or find another way around it. When you do engage with an enemy, or even the bosses, you're looking for clues and finding solutions. Instead of leveling up, you arm yourself with knowledge, and once you find that trick, you're unbeatable. You feel strong. This is thanks to lead designer Eiji Aonuma. Dungeons, towns, and puzzles are intentionally obscure. Verticality is present in almost every area you go. You don't get all the information as you enter the room. You must explore. Aonuma's design forces players out of their comfort zone and exposes bad habits, and I think any player coming to this game fresh will have a new and interesting experience. Making the game 3D changed the classic Zelda gameplay from a room-to-room adventure to something more introspective, allowing you to freely observe and explore the world's secrets, to get you involved in the characters and relationships, and to get you truly engrossed into your role as a hero. Link travels to Hyrule and meets Zelda as foretold by destiny, and the two hatch a plan to thwart Ganondorf from obtaining the Triforce and plunging the world into darkness. They almost do, but as Link grabs the Master Sword to enter the Sacred Realm and claim the Triforce for himself, a little Hylian bureaucracy traps Link in stasis for 7 years, and Ganondorf claims the Triforce and becomes the King of Evil. Link must now pick up the pieces of the world and stop Ganondorf himself. I've heard this game's story described as either a hero's journey or a coming-of-age story, but guess what? It's both. Briefly, the hero's journey is a loose collection of narrative hooks that are used in stories from since the dawn of time. And I say loose because I found many different variations, but there's a few that are consistent. There's an interesting dynamic to this collection of narratives that tend to imbue a story with struggle, adversity, being presented with a challenge, and overcoming that challenge, By the end of the game, Link definitely encounters all of these points across his adventure, including a call to adventure, heroic tasks, descent into the abyss, confrontation with death, ascension, and a gift from the goddess. And all of this makes him a...
Psych, you do a full hero's journey before you complete the tutorial.
This game uses the hero's journey so well as a tool. What's more important about the hero's journey is the broad message it contains, not the individual points. Meeting with the Deku Tree, he asks Link to destroy the curse inside him. After you do that, he says he was dead regardless, leaving the villagers to assume it was Link's fault. Link is forced to leave his home, destiny or otherwise.
Which makes leaving your hometown a call to adventure.
Using the hero's journey to frame a theme makes it, within that context, itself heroic. The 3 starting quests have you exploring a new area, looking for a stone to unlock the door of time. Each of these correspond with a goddess representing courage, power, and wisdom. The character in each of these has a different relationship with Link, friendship, family, and love, each encompassed by their own hero's journey done through the broad message of growing up, which are all baked into both the story and the gameplay. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that each of these has a unified theme. Friendship is brave, family is powerful, love is wise, and that searching these out, cultivating them, and fighting for them is not only worth it, but is itself heroic. Then you revisit them 7 years later, and they take on a brand new dynamic, because each quest is its own step in the grand coming-of-age story that this game is telling. The game narrative reveals itself implicitly as you play, combined with gameplay, music, art. I could go deeper. That method of storytelling is everywhere in this game, even if it's just a 3-act structure that's constantly looping through adventuring, dungeon delving, reward, and exposition. This can even be applied to the combat, which itself is a microcosm of the hero's journey. I wanted to look at this game and take from it a reason why so many people like it. It came out over 20 years ago and it still does a few things better than any other video game. What makes Link a hero? What makes anybody a hero? I started to ask that myself because every aspect of this game is wrapped in that concept. Link is a hero not because a tree told him so. He was given an idea, obstacles to overcome with companions, mentors. He asked for and was given help and worked to see it through, and that journey makes him a hero. Not the beginning or the end, but the whole thing. So why do people like it? The hero's journey is flexible and it changes from place to place, but it has a very core narrative and fantasy. That also applies to everyday shit. The broad narrative strokes of defeating a dragon can also be found in something simple as learning an instrument or fixing a car, completing school. I think people are empathetic to these stories, especially if they have a vector into the experience, because they've done it. People do impossible tasks every day, and you could look at something that you've done and realize it lines up perfectly. After playing this, I started to see that dynamic everywhere. Ocarina of Time is great because it seemed like for the first time an entire game was telling a story and every small piece was working together to deliver that message. It told that story both literally and implicitly through its very architecture, and that's the reason why you can play it and feel heroic, because you are.